All right, now naming and style conventions, right? So, you hear sometimes the word of, someone wrote code that's very Pythonic, right? Or, basically development is very Pythonic versus not Pythonic. Okay, so what's Pythonic? Okay, so of all major programming languages, Python has the most strict and rigid style guidelines that development tools require you to follow, right? And the style guide of Python, which is PEP 8, right? All of the specifications for Python, they start from PEP. The proposals then become law, quote unquote. So PEP 8, you can see that's a pretty early document. Of course, it gets updated from time to time. And the second chapter in this document is named "A Foolish Consistency is the Hobgoblin of Little Minds." Okay, so first question, what is Hobgoblin? Okay, so Hobgoblin is apparently a mischievous troll, and foolish consistency is the mischievous troll of little minds, which I would take it that don't be foolishly consistent. Okay, that's very strange to see in this document, because when you keep reading the document, you discover that Python, the committee that is in charge of Python, actually requires you, I don't want to use the word foolish, right? But, very, very consistent, right? So most Python IDEs will keep providing very annoying feedback by highlighting style deviations that would be perfectly fine in almost every other programming language, right? So here's a random sampling of rigid but not functional conventions that PEP 8 expects you to follow. Okay, you're expected to use Pascal case, and Pascal case is pioneered by programming language Pascal, many years ago, right? Precursor of C++. So this language, basically each word you start from a capital, right? So it's called Pascal case, right? So Pascal case for class names, uppercase, every letter is uppercase for constants, right? And then snake case, so snake case is the one with underscore, right? So it looks like a snake. Well, at least it's supposed to. So snake case for functions, methods, attributes, variables. Okay, so you will see in Python that some older older libraries or packages, such as unit test, right? So one of the two leading predominant packages for unit testing, one is unit test and the other one is PyTest, right? So these are the two leaders. Everything else is lower, not market share, the open source, but quote unquote mind share, right? So unit test uses camel case for function and method names. Why? Well, it's old, right? So it's old, it's wise, tip your hat to the experience and wisdom of the old age, but don't use this older style, because if you write Python with camel case attributes or function names, people will think that you really don't know what you're doing. It's not like in C++, where multiple naming conventions or style conventions coexist, and people very happily use libraries. Some use camel case, some use Python style. Everybody's happy, nobody complains, right? So this is more like Java, right, or C#, where there is the one naming convention, and Python is like that. That's actually not bad. Java and C# do the same thing, so nothing to complain about here. Okay, but what Java and C# do not do, or C++, is that it gets stricter and stricter as you keep reading. Like, for example, 2 blank lines in certain cases and 1 blank line in others, right? And really, it's very hard to remember when to use which, but the editor, your development environment, like PyCharm or VS Code and so forth, will underline it for you and tell you that you've done something really bad here, like put an extra line, right? You have supposed to import different libraries on separate lines, but import classes from the same library in the same line. Even if it's very long, you're not supposed to break the line. Gets a little strict, right? And you're supposed to march information when you go to lunch with your colleagues to someone beating the drum. No, I'm kidding, right? So, but everything else is serious. It's really very, very strict, right? So let me show you. Where's PyCharm? Go back to PyCharm, right? So let me open a class. I think so. Let's just open this unsafe class, right? I'll explain a bit later why it's unsafe. Right, so okay, well, let's take a look here, right? So there's a line here, so I put an extra line. PyCharm doesn't like it, right? So what does it say? I'm just trying to put the mouse on it. Okay, so, sorry. Well, okay, so I'm trying to Okay, I'm not precise with the mouse. Anyway, so I'm trying to put the mouse so I see the message. Well, the message would say extra line, you're bad, right? So okay, so do that. It's fine, right? So actually, sorry, that's also actually bad, but it takes a minute for it to become unhappy, right? So in other words, the tools will complain, right? And some of the tools will complain by underlining. Command line tools will cause an error. So there are a lot of things here that require again very high consistency. So that's why this quote about how you don't want to be foolishly consistent, just choose your own style and follow it. Well, in Python it's not like that, right? But in Python also there are some functional conventions, right? And that you have to follow because they change what the code does. And the most famous, of course, and key functional convention is indentation, right? So when you choose indentation is when you shift the text to the right or to the left, right? So indent defines code scope. So in other programming languages, and I'm talking about what everyone here in this course knows, other languages have curly brackets. In Python you have indent. So we're quoting Python as Guido van Rossum, the inventor of the language, indented, not intended. It's kind of pun. So a t-shirt with it, right? We're quoting as he indented. Okay, well, but there are other things. Like, for example, when you use a leading underscore for protected attributes, two leading underscores for private, and then, Python will create a name like this one, where it will prefix it to the class name. So nothing is really private in Python, but it will hide it from your derived classes. And tests will only be found. Module name starts from test. Functional method name starts from test. And the class name, if your test is in a class and not in a separate function, will also start from test, right? So the thing is, you can change some of these conventions, and we do change them, because one of the things that this does is that it creates kind of a very inconvenient sorting, because if you sort in the class browser, if your classes are sorted, you have classes A, B, C, then there's a huge number of classes which start from test on T, right? And then the rest of the alphabet. So it's much easier if you have test as a suffix. Well, also there's another advantage, and again, let me switch to PyCharm. So we changed that, right? And the way that we changed it, and again, this is something that I believe makes sense, right? But it's not, by any means standard or the only way, right? So what we did is that we changed such that the test is a suffix for class name and also for the module name, because what you want to do is to have the module name to be the snake case version of the class name. And I also recommend just putting one class per module, as a matter of, practice, good practice, right? But still keep the function with the prefix, right? So in this case, I think it just sounds better in English. You unsafe class test dot test attribute name, right? You can see that method name is not getting confused or mixed up with the class name, because one has suffix and the other is prefix. And when I run the tests, they execute. Let's just see, right? Okay, the test run. Now, why did they run, right? Why did they find them? Because I have the file called pytest.ini, right? So you can go and overwrite this standard convention. So somewhere in your path, there should be file pytest.ini. In this file, you're saying Python files should have that pattern, and Python classes should have that pattern, right? So I changed it to a suffix. Not all tools are sensitive to that, right? So sometimes generally, the less you deviate from the standard, the better. I think that's one place where it's worth deviating, because then they're sorted properly and they're kind of more, easier to name. So we use this configuration file to change the default behavior. Okay. With that, let me just go back to the slide, right? So the next thing is we're going to have the hands-on session.